Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you are joining us today, you're likely someone who is always looking to learn, always
Yeah.
looking to, optimize,
Right.
always trying to find that next protocol or practice that's going to bring just a little more peace or maybe a little more clarity or health into your everyday life.
And it is a constant search for a lot of people.
It really is. You know that feeling, right? You're
Mhm.
scrolling through your feeds, you're reading the articles, maybe taking notes in a meeting, and you are just constantly bombarded with this message that you need to be doing more.
You need to be meditating.
Exactly. You need to be practicing mindfulness. You have to adopt these ancient, highly revered practices because they are supposedly universally considered good for you.
Right, the universal good.
Yeah. It's like you have to wake up at 5 a.m., you have to sit on the cushion, you have to contort yourself into a specific pose, or you're somehow, I don't know, failing at wellness.
Which is an incredibly stressful way to approach stress relief.
It's totally counterproductive. But uh, what if we told you that today's deep dive is going to completely upend that entire assumption?
I mean, completely shatter it.
Completely. Because what if the absolute highest authority on the subject, someone who has literally given their entire life to it, told you that the very thing they have dedicated half a century to mastering might actually be entirely wrong for you?
It's a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to unpack a singular, just incredibly dense and highly counterintuitive message from a creator known as Osman, the blind Muslim yogi.
And we are going to explore his central, fascinating thesis here, which is that all that is good may not necessarily be good for you.
Such a wild ride of a philosophy. We're going to be touching on everything from heavily marketed wellness protocols to the actual spiritual validation of washing dishes,
Yes, washing dishes.
and going from ancient chakras to the very nature of human autonomy.
It really is a fascinating philosophical foundation to explore today. To give you the overview and set the context for our deep dive, what we're looking at here is essentially a raw, unfiltered perspective.
Yeah, this isn't some polished studio production.
Exactly. This is not a highly produced, focus grouped wellness seminar. It is a direct, unfiltered monologue to his audience from a master practitioner. And the core of what he is saying is profoundly disruptive to the modern spiritual and wellness industries.
Because if you think about the multi-billion-dollar machine built around yoga and meditation today,
It's massive. And he is effectively telling his audience, people who have likely sought him out, specifically to learn those exact modalities that the very practices he has mastered over 5 decades might not be the right path for them.
which is just so refreshing to hear.
It is. He completely dismantles the preciousness, the almost sanctimonious aura that usually surrounds these topics. He's coming from a place of intense, rigorous, lifelong dedication, and yet his ultimate message is one of profound pragmatism and individual autonomy.
He's really looking at the entire landscape of modern spirituality, right?
Yes, and highlighting its flaws, its historical inaccuracies, and its really dangerous tendency to turn people into blind followers rather than empowered individuals.
Okay, let's unpack this because we cannot even begin to dive into his philosophy without first understanding exactly who is delivering this message.
The source himself is crucial here.
The source is just an absolute enigma. He's this walking juxtaposition of ideas and titles and life experiences that you do not normally hear in the same sentence, let alone embody in one single person.
Right.
He introduces himself as Osman, the blind Muslim yogi. Just pause on those three words together for a second. It immediately tells you that we are dealing with a totally unique perspective here.
Absolutely.
He mentions that he's 57 years old, and he describes himself as a bioenergy healer on a master level. And let's be clear, he does not shy away from making some incredibly bold, paradigm-shifting claims right out of the gate.
He really doesn't.
He states that he has telepathic healing capabilities. He specializes in critical care, recovery, and terminal illnesses. He talks about people coming to him when traditional doctors have failed with all the standard treatment protocols.
When patients are given days or weeks to live.
Right. And he claims a success rate of over 90% in turning those situations around over the past 5 decades. Now, as always on this deep dive, we are here to impartially report on the message provided.
We're not endorsing or validating those specific medical claims.
Exactly. We're not taking sides on the spiritual claims either,
Yeah.
but we absolutely have to look at the sheer magnitude of what he is stating to understand the platform he's speaking from.
We do. And we need to look at the tension between those massive claims and the way he actually operates in the world. because that juxtaposition is central to understanding his entire worldview.
How so?
Well, on one hand, he operates heavily in the realm of the highly esoteric. He's talking about telepathy, bioenergy, and stepping in to reverse terminal illnesses where traditional science has supposedly hit an absolute wall.
Right. Which sounds like things you hear from people who completely reject modern medicine.
Exactly. These are massive concepts that exist on the fringes of accepted modern paradigms. If you just hear that blend of claims, you might expect someone who tells you that science is a lie and only his magical energy can save you.
And he doesn't do that.
He does the exact opposite. In the very same breath, he remains incredibly, almost aggressively grounded. He explicitly states, and he makes a real point to emphasize this heavily to his audience, that his natural-based therapies are absolutely not a replacement for medical treatment.
That is such a crucial distinction. He isn't telling people to throw away their prescriptions.
Not at all. He positions his modalities as complementary. They are meant to enhance what might be lacking elsewhere in a patient's energetic or physical field. But he outright refuses to position himself as an alternative to a medical doctor.
That level of grounded pragmatism from someone making esoteric claims is incredibly rare.
It is. And that same grounded nature extends entirely to his background in yoga and meditation as well. He notes that he is an advanced level teacher, having practiced the art form for almost 50 years, and having taught it for 46 years.
Wait, let me do the math on that. If he's 57 now, and he's been practicing for 50 years, does that mean he started when he was around 7 years old?
That is precisely what the math tells us.
And if he's been teaching for 46 years, he began teaching in some capacity at age 11.
Yes, and that timeline is what separates him from the modern wellness influencer landscape. We aren't looking at someone who did a weekend retreat in Bali in their late 20s, printed out a certificate, and started a lifestyle brand.
Right. We're looking at a literal lifetime of total immersion.
It's staggering to think about. He talks about studying under great masters from different schools of thought all across the globe.
Yeah, he mentions the Far East, the Middle East, the West, and he even specifically highlights studying within scientific communities. So he isn't just locked into one ancient lineage.
No, he is pulling from this vast, cross-cultural, cross-disciplinary well of knowledge.
And what does he do with all that accumulated wisdom? He doesn't just parrot it back. He adapts it. He says he created his own unique protocols to make them faster, easier, quicker, more time efficient.
And more results-oriented for the modern person.
Exactly. He talks about this 5-minute yoga and meditation program that he offers completely for free on his channels, reaching students in over 100 countries.
The accessibility he insists upon is another crucial layer to his profile. He points out that over his 46 years of teaching yoga, he has never charged anyone a single dollar for it.
Not $1 in 46 years.
It has always been free. And his reasoning for this is fascinating. He explicitly states that he learned the most advanced techniques from his masters without ever being charged money, and he believes this knowledge is fundamentally everyone's birthright.
Now, to be clear, he does clarify that while his yoga teachings are free, his master-level energy healing services are a paid premium service.
Yes, but he strictly separates the two. He refuses to withhold the spiritual knowledge of yoga and meditation behind a paywall.
And when you look at the intensity of his lifetime practice, I mean, he mentions practicing up to 18 hours a day at certain stages of his life.
18 hours.
And currently maintaining 8 to 10 hours a day just to, in his words, sharpen the sword. You start to understand the internal experiences this dedication produced, because he achieved his first state of samadhi at just 19 years old.
Let's pause there because we need to make sure we don't just gloss over that term. It gets thrown around a lot in wellness circles without much weight.
Right. For anyone listening who might not be deep into yogic philosophy, what exactly is he claiming when he says he hit samadhi at 19?
It's a vital term to define. Samadhi, in classical yogic tradition, is essentially the ultimate goal of the practice. It is a state of superconsciousness.
So it's not just feeling relaxed after a good stretch.
No, not at all. It is the complete absorption of the individual mind into the universal consciousness. It's the dissolution of the ego, a state of profound, absolute bliss and union where the illusion of separation between you and the universe vanishes.
Wow.
To claim to have achieved this at 19 years old is an astronomical statement in the spiritual community.
And he casually follows that up by saying that since that first time at 19, he has had about 40 or 50 samadhi experiences.
Along with multiple kundalini awakenings.
All right. And again, for the listener, a Kundalini awakening is often described as this intense surge of dormant primal energy uncoiling from the base of the spine and traveling up through the body, profoundly altering your perception of reality.
It's a massive energetic shift.
So we have a guy claiming 50 experiences of ultimate cosmic consciousness, but, and this is where his message takes a turn that will completely blindside anyone steeped in traditional wellness culture. He says he hasn't established himself in that permanent enlightenment level because he didn't find the hype to be all that appealing.
Which is an incredible thing to admit. He says he practices his protocols because they work for him, because they keep him fit, keep his energy levels amazing, and he loves it. But he immediately pivots to the audience, looks right at you, and says, but it doesn't mean it's good for you.
Which is just wild.
Yeah.
Let's pause there because we need to recognize how almost blasphemous that statement is within the traditional yogic community.
Oh, completely.
Usually when you encounter a guru or a master with this level of supposed enlightenment, someone who claims half a century of rigorous daily practice and dozens of samadhi experiences, they become incredibly dogmatic.
They usually say it's their way or the highway.
Exactly. They push their specific path as the absolute, definitive, singular way to truth. The implication is always, I have found the ultimate answer, and you must do exactly what I did to find it.
But Osman goes in the exact opposite direction.
He takes all that authority, all that spiritual capital, and uses it to tell you that his way might be terrible for you. This perfectly sets up his central thesis. A good thing may not necessarily be good for you. What's fascinating here is how Osman systematically strips away the preciousness of spirituality. Think about your own life, listening to this right now. We have this pervasive myth in modern wellness culture of the universal good.
The idea that one size fits all.
Yes, it's the idea that if a practice like mindfulness or meditation or a specific type of yoga is ancient and universally acclaimed by influencers and doctors alike, it must therefore be mandatory for anyone seeking a healthy, balanced life.
And if you aren't doing it, you are somehow failing.
Osman completely shatters that. He is looking at you and saying that just because a protocol is amazing, just because it worked for a master who practiced 18 hours a day, it doesn't mean it is right for your specific physical, mental, or energetic makeup.
Think about the psychology of the listener encountering this message.
It's got to be a relief.
It is a profound, almost cellular relief. For someone who has been forcing themselves to sit on a meditation cushion every morning, feeling guilty because their mind is racing and they secretly hate it.
Or someone who is struggling through a hot yoga class that brings them absolutely no joy, but a lot of joint pain.
Right. To hear a recognized master say, you don't have to do this, he is offering permission to drop the guilt. He suggests that perhaps for you, an entirely different physical activity is not just acceptable, but actually superior for your system.
He gets so wonderfully practical with it, too. He doesn't just leave you hanging with this abstract idea. He starts listing off these gritty, everyday alternatives.
He really broadens the definition.
He does. He says, maybe for you, Pilates is better, or maybe pushing weights is better, or boxing. I love that he includes boxing.
It's brilliant.
He mentions cycling, jogging, playing sports like football, rowing, swimming, tennis. He is completely flattening the hierarchy between a sacred ancient spiritual practice and hitting a heavy bag in a sweaty boxing gym.
Because if boxing brings you to that state of focus, if it clears your mind, regulates your energy, and brings you physical well-being, then that is your practice. You don't need to wrap it in Sanskrit to make it valid.
He is radically redefining the parameters of what constitutes a therapeutic or spiritual practice.
By validating boxing or lifting weights as potentially equivalent to yoga for a specific individual, he's bringing the locus of control back to you.
It's all about autonomy.
Exactly. He is advising you to listen to your own somatic intelligence, your own nervous system, rather than conforming to an external, universally prescribed concept of what is good. He's saying that the vehicle doesn't matter, the destination of balance and energetic health does.
And he doesn't just stop at high-intensity sports. He goes into this beautiful, simple description of grounding.
The grounding is a perfect example.
He says that people think they need to get into deep, complex spirituality to find peace, but he suggests an alternative. Just go outside, put your hands on the soil and the grass outdoors in the sun.
It's so accessible.
He talks about going for a walk in a park or in nature, taking off your shoes, letting your bare feet physically touch the ground, and just resting your back against a tree. He literally says, this alone is like yoga. Very therapeutic.
Think about that for a second. If you are listening to this on a commute, stressed about finding an hour for a studio class today, Osman is telling you that leaning against a tree for 10 minutes on your lunch break is entirely valid.
You don't need to pay for a complicated class or twist yourself into a pretzel.
The simplicity of that is profound, especially coming from someone who knows the most complex esoteric techniques. And if we connect this idea of physical, practical alternatives to the broader context of his life, it perfectly bridges into what I think is his most surprising alternative to traditional meditation and yoga.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Because beyond sports and beyond sitting in nature, Osman introduces the concept of domestic chores as a highly valid, spiritually significant form of physical practice.
This is where Osman's message takes a turn that will completely blindside anyone steeped in traditional wellness culture. We're talking to a master yogi, someone who speaks about telepathy and cosmic consciousness, and suddenly he is giving us a deeply personal, remarkably vulnerable window into his romantic and domestic life.
He is very open about his life.
He is. He states right away that he has been divorced multiple times, 6 times to be exact. And he goes into immense detail about his intense involvement in household chores to support his wives.
Framing this everyday mundane labor as a completely valid physical and therapeutic activity.
He says that doing housework, sweeping the floors, vacuuming, helping out at home, these aren't distractions from your spiritual life. These can actually be your yoga.
He recounts how throughout his marriages, he was the one consistently doing the dishes, drying the dishes, washing the dishes.
The level of detail he provides regarding his domestic life is quite striking. And we really need to look at his deliberate breakdown of traditional masculine archetypes here.
That's a huge component of this. Remember, he is speaking from a cultural and personal background where traditional gender roles can often be incredibly rigid.
Where domestic labor is often strictly coded as women's work.
Precisely. Yet Osman completely goes after the fragile male ego here. He assures guys that picking up a vacuum isn't going to strip them of their masculinity. He explicitly tells his male listeners, you're not going to become a woman, you're still going to be a manly man.
It is a preemptive strike against the cultural conditioning that prevents many men from engaging in domestic labor.
But even deeper than the deconstruction of gender norms is the profound act of empathy embedded in his reasoning. He isn't just doing chores to burn calories.
No, not at all.
He is doing them out of a deep protective awareness of his partner's physical and mental vulnerabilities.
Yes, the empathy isn't just theoretical, it translates into grueling physical action. He shares this specific anecdote about a time when they didn't have a washing machine.
Right, they were moving apartments.
Yeah, and he notes that his wives were working hard and coming home exhausted. So what does this master yogi do? He hand washes his wives' and children's clothes.
He physically scrubs them, dries them, irons them.
He talks about when his children were small, he would be the one to bathe them, put their clothes on, and feed them himself. And he specifically highlights the middle of the night. When the babies were crying at 2 a.m., he would be the one to get up.
And his reasoning for this is just so fiercely protective. He says, my wife is tired. She just gave birth, for crying out loud. She's going to have postpartum depression, and she needs 1 or 2 years to recover from that trauma.
He views the act of giving birth not just as a beautiful miracle, but as a severe physical trauma that requires a massive, multi-year recovery window.
And he sees his domestic labor waking up in the dark to hold a screaming infant as the shield protecting her during that vulnerable time.
That recognition of postpartum depression and the acknowledgement of a 1 to 2 year recovery period for childbirth is incredibly progressive.
Compassionate and, frankly, scientifically accurate. But to hear it framed as a spiritual duty by a mystic is remarkable. He is taking the esoteric concept of karma yoga,
which is the yoga of selfless action and service.
Exactly. And he's applying it directly to the most unglamorous aspects of the domestic sphere. He mentions sweeping, weeding, vacuuming, and doing garden work as forms of exercise that can function entirely as your yoga practice.
For the listener right now, he is telling you that the ultimate spiritual practice might not be found meditating on a mountaintop. It might be found at the kitchen sink at 2 in the morning, holding a crying infant so your exhausted partner can sleep.
So what does this all mean? We have this incredibly grounded, empathetic master who views washing dishes and walking barefoot in the grass as peak spiritual practices.
It means that when he turns his attention to the modern spiritual industry, the industry that charges thousands of dollars to teach you how to be enlightened, his critique is going to be absolutely devastating.
And he does not hold back.
He really doesn't.
Yeah.
He pivots from this beautiful, practical lifestyle advice directly into a harsh, unyielding critique of the professional yoga and meditation field. He introduces what we can call the 90% rule.
Osman claims, point blank, that more than 90% of teachers in the yoga and meditation field today are actively misleading people.
It is a staggering indictment of an entire global industry.
He argues that this vast majority of teachers rely entirely on confusing theory, strange Sanskrit names, and paper certificates, rather than any actual practical internal experience.
Think about the modern certification industry. You pay a substantial fee, you attend a 200-hour course over a few weekends, you memorize the physical alignment of a few poses.
And suddenly, you are handed a piece of paper that declares you a yoga teacher.
Osman is pointing out the inherent danger in an industry where that piece of paper overrides actual spiritual attainment. They are teaching a map of a territory they have never actually visited.
He illustrates this perfectly by diving deep into the literal definition of the word yoga.
Yes, we throw that word around to mean stretching inexpensive hands, but he reminds us that yoga literally translates to union.
And true to his style, he provides the most brilliantly grounded, humorous examples of what union can actually look like in the real world.
He says, union can be union with your wife, union with your girlfriend. It could be union with your favorite bottle of whiskey.
Or union with your favorite brand of cigarettes, or union with your favorite meal.
He is entirely removing the pretentious, sanctimonious aura from the concept. If you are deeply, completely connected and absorbed in the sensory experience of your favorite meal, where the world falls away and you are just entirely present with that food, that is a form of union.
It's a hilarious and effective way to demystify the concept, but he contrasts those mundane, worldly examples with the ultimate spiritual union that the deep, esoteric practice of yoga was originally designed for.
Merging your individual energies with a cosmic energy.
Exactly. He describes this as entering the ocean of bliss called Setananda. And this contrast between the mundane union and the cosmic union leads directly into one of the most powerful analogies he uses to dismantle the modern teaching industry.
The bicycle analogy.
Yes. Osman asks a critical, almost uncomfortable question of these modern certificated teachers. Did they experience samadhi before they started teaching? Because, as he points out, the ultimate historical meaning and goal of yoga is to attain that superconscious state of samadhi.
Therefore, to teach yoga without having experienced it is fundamentally flawed at its core. I love his analogy for this. He says that teaching yoga without having ever experienced samadhi yourself is exactly like trying to teach someone how to ride a bicycle when you have absolutely no idea how to ride one yourself.
Think about how absurd that would be.
You can stand there and read all the manuals in the world to your student. You can explain the physics of pedal velocity. You can draw diagrams of gyroscopic balance. You can explain the exact angle the handlebars need to be at.
But if you've never actually felt the invisible, intuitive balance of being on two wheels, you cannot teach someone else how to find it.
They will just crash. Because you only have the theory, but no practical reality.
But the bicycle analogy is perfect because balance, like spiritual union, is experiential. You can't intellectualize it.
And Osman notes that this lack of direct experience in the teaching community doesn't just result in bad, superficial exercise classes. It leads to literal historical errors being passed down as absolute, unquestionable truth.
When you rely only on theory and ancient texts, you become entirely vulnerable to the mistakes within those texts. Which brings us to a really specific, fascinating controversy he highlights regarding the ancient scriptures.
This part is wild. If you've ever been to a New Age shop or a yoga studio, you've probably seen charts of the chakras.
The energy centers of the body.
Right. They're always color-coded in the exact same way. And Osman points out a specific glaring discrepancy in what are universally considered authentic 5,000-year-old scriptures regarding the color of the Muladhara chakra, commonly known as the root chakra.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see the deep vulnerability of relying solely on written antiquity without experiential verification.
It's basically a 5,000-year-old game of telephone.
That's exactly what it is. Osman explains that over millennia of what is called prayas, or disciple succession, errors naturally occur.
A text is written thousands of years ago. It is copied by hand, it is translated into new languages, it is interpreted by scholars who may not be practitioners, and it is passed down generation after generation.
Inevitably, mistakes are made, things get lost or altered in transmission.
And the specific debate he highlights proves this perfectly. He says the vast majority of these modern teachers, based on these corrupted texts and charts, will confidently tell you that the Muladhara, the root chakra, is red.
It's universally taught as red.
But Osman, drawing on his 5 decades of direct, daily internal experience and thousands of repetitions of deep meditation where he actually perceives these energy centers, insists absolutely that it is yellow.
He isn't guessing, he is reporting what he sees.
He even explains logically why the mistake happened historically. He notes that the Manipura chakra, the solar plexus chakra, which sits a bit higher up, is also yellow.
Somewhere along the line of that 5,000-year telephone game, a scribe or a translator caused a mix-up in the texts.
But because Osman has actually been there, internally, he knows. He says there's a big difference between yellow and red.
He is using this chakra color debate as a microcosm for the entire systemic failure of modern spiritual teaching. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like an imposter because you didn't feel what a yoga teacher told you that you should be feeling in a pose or visualizing in a meditation, this is your validation.
Osman is saying the teacher might literally be reading from a corrupted 5,000-year-old typo.
He notes that some obscure scholarly lines actually do have different versions of the text that correctly identify the root chakra as yellow, which proves the textual divergence exists.
But the core issue is that modern teachers are blindly teaching what is written without experiencing it themselves.
They memorize that the root chakra is red, they print it on their handouts, and they speak with this unearned absolute authority.
They profess to have thousands of students, they run expensive master classes, they charge money for certifications, but they lack the fundamental experiential truth.
They are, as he says, making a mistake because they simply do not know what they're talking about on a practical level.
Now, despite this harsh critique, he's actually quite gracious about the money aspect for the lower-level teachers. He acknowledges the reality of the modern world.
He says that people are making an income, maybe helping fund their university studies by teaching a yoga class part-time.
And he says hats off to them for adding value to people's lives just by getting them moving and into the practice. But he draws a hard, unforgiving line at the spiritual authority they project when they haven't done the work.
So this naturally begs a massive question for the listener. If the goal isn't just to memorize texts and colors, but to achieve this direct experience of the subtle body, to ride the bicycle and actually achieve samadhi, what does one actually do with that enlightenment once they achieve it?
And here is where Osman's philosophy gets deeply provocative, because his personal viewpoint on the ultimate goal of enlightenment is completely opposed to the traditional narrative you hear from every other guru.
It is highly unconventional, especially for someone of his stated mastery.
Usually the goal of these esoteric practices is to achieve a permanent state of bliss, to withdraw from the painful illusions of the physical world, and to remain in a state of constant, undisturbed spiritual elevation.
The goal is to escape the cycle of mundane suffering. But Osman actively rejects this.
He has been there. He has felt the superconscious state. And he reveals that he does not want to be permanently blissed out and withdrawn from the world. In fact, he calls the idea of being alone and withdrawn for all eternity boring.
Boring. Can you imagine a master yogi, someone who has dedicated 50 years to this, calling eternal cosmic bliss boring?
It is incredibly refreshing. It shatters the stoic, humorless image of the enlightened master. He says he wants to interact. He wants to play games.
He poignantly notes that because he's physically blind, he is restricted in the number of games he can play in this world, but the desire for human connection, for interaction, for play is paramount to him.
He wants to be with people. He says it might be okay for a short while to be all alone with yourself, maybe retreat to a cave for a bit to reset, but for eternity, come on, he says.
He doesn't think that eternal withdrawal is for 99% of people. And because he views this pursuit of constant isolated bliss as fundamentally flawed for most humans, he offers a highly controversial, intensely pragmatic take on the whole endeavor.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have to look at his view of the modern spiritual seeker here.
He is suggesting that many people who flock to these retreats and gurus aren't actually looking for profound union or truth. They're simply looking for a new kind of drug fix.
They're stressed, they're unhappy, and they are chasing a high that will numb them to the realities of their lives.
And Osman's pragmatic advice to these people is startling. He suggests that if a person's only goal is to experience that altered state of bliss, if they just want to see the lights and feel the ego dissolve, it is cheaper, easier, and quicker to just do DMT or mushrooms.
I literally gasped when I read that part of his message. A 57-year-old Muslim yogi telling people to just try psychedelics if they want a shortcut.
It is a radical reframing. He is proposing these chemical shortcuts as a way to quickly see if that blissed out state is actually something you want, rather than sacrificing decades of your life to rigorous, grueling practice just to feel a little bit.
Think about the pragmatism there. Don't spend 50 years of your life sitting in an ashram trying to escape reality if you can test drive the escape route in an afternoon with psychedelics.
And then realize you actually prefer being grounded, interacting with your friends, and playing games.
Exactly. He is saying, don't throw your life away chasing an experience that might not even suit your personality. Which forces us to ask the ultimate question. If the goal of yoga and meditation isn't to escape the world, and it isn't to stay in a permanent state of disconnected bliss, then what is the true utility of these ancient practices?
Why has Osman dedicated 50 years, often 18 hours a day, to it?
Right. And his answer brings us to the final, incredibly empowering core of his philosophy. He uses yoga practically. He says it helps his physical energy levels improve. It improves his brain capacity.
He cites the commonly held idea that we only use 8 to 10% of our brains, which we know is a bit of a colloquial metaphor. But he claims that utilizing specific practices like meditation opens up the higher capacities of the brain.
Allowing you to realize your full potential as a human being while you are here on Earth.
This raises an important question about how Osman views reality itself. He claims that advanced yoga allows for a connection to higher frequencies, alternative realities, and different dimensions.
So notice the crucial difference. He doesn't use this connection to escape his life. He uses it to enrich his earthly experience.
He states that the physical world we perceive with our standard senses is only 1% of reality, while 99% is unseen.
By opening up to that 99%, he argues, the world doesn't become something you want to flee from. It becomes exponentially more beautiful, more complex, and bigger.
He uses the esoteric not to transcend the mundane, but to become more deeply and effectively engaged with it.
And because he believes that this vast, beautiful reality is accessible to everyone, remember, he gives his foundational teachings away for free. He ends his message with a fierce ultimate warning to you, the listener.
He warns against any form of spiritual subjugation.
He vehemently opposes the traditional concept of taking Diksha. Now, Diksha is a formal initiation in many Indian religions, where a student is given a mantra or blessing by a guru, often involving a vow of obedience or surrender to that teacher.
Osman is entirely against this if it means putting your life, your decisions, or your autonomy under another human being's control. He wants you to maintain your absolute freedom.
His anti-guru sentiment is arguably the most powerful and necessary moment in his entire message.
He tells the listener, point blank, slavery ended long ago. You're not a slave that you have to obey now is your guru.
It is a profound, aggressive rejection of the hierarchical structures that dominate so many spiritual traditions, where abuse of power is, unfortunately, very common.
He reminds the listener that they do not need to travel the world to find a master, they don't need to waste their lives in subservience, and they never have to surrender their agency to find enlightenment.
He points out that they can find ways to open their kundalini and achieve these elevated states for free through his public channels or other accessible means without ever giving up their freedom or paying exorbitant fees.
He is basically saying, take the tools, leave the dogma, and go live your life.
It is such an incredibly unique, empowering perspective. We have spent this deep dive exploring the mind of the blind Muslim yogi, a master who completely demystifies the master-student dynamic.
He is someone who has dedicated his entire life to ancient scriptures, yet has the courage and experiential authority to call out their historical inaccuracies.
He is a man who touches the subtle energies of the universe, who claims to heal the unhealable, yet validates washing your partner's dishes in the middle of the night as a profound, masculine spiritual practice.
And above all, he is a teacher who tells you to trust your own path, your own physical needs, and your own autonomy above any guru or universally acclaimed good.
The synthesis of all this is a radical call for self-trust. If you take anything away from Osman's message, we must remember that true wellness isn't about forcing yourself into a trendy 5,000-year-old box just because society or a certificated teacher tells you it is the correct path.
It is about finding the union that actually works for the specific realities, stresses, and joys of your life.
Whether that union is found in deep meditation, hitting a heavy bag in a boxing gym, resting your back against a tree in the park, or helping your partner with the laundry so they can recover from the trauma of childbirth. You get to decide what your yoga is.
So to you, the listener, as you go back to your day, back to scrolling your feeds and navigating the endless demands to optimize your life, remember Osman's words. You don't have to be a slave to the protocols.
If the 5:00 a.m. ice bath and meditation session is making you miserable, drop it. Do what works for you.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If a master who has touched the absolute limits of human consciousness, who has experienced samadhi dozens of times, and who claims to perceive the 99% of the invisible world, decides that the most meaningful, spiritual, and manly thing he can do with his energy is to come back down to earth, stand at the sink, and wash the dishes for his tired partner, how does that change the way you value completely ordinary, mundane moments of your day-to-day?